Hi, everybody. My name is Kelly Bruno, and I met Dr. Payn, or DP, my freshman year at Bucknell, which was the end of 2009 going into 2010. So I guess the middle of my freshman year, I auditioned for the Rooke Chapel Ringers to fill a spot that was left by somebody who was studying abroad. So little freshman me walked in very nervous to Rooke Chapel and rang some bells, and that is how I met DP, and the rest is history. I think I've also known him through Rooke Chapel Choir, and have loved every musical moment that I've shared with him and all the other people that I've sang with and rang with through the years.
Hi, I'm Glenn Vischer. I graduated from Bucknell in 1989, and I've actually known Dr. Payn pretty much all of my life. I think I met him when I was about 6 or 7 years old because he was the music director at my church in Morristown. And while I didn't ring under him, he was a figure that everybody knew in the church, and he got me started. He and his crew got me started ringing. After I when I went to college, I went to Bucknell, and I actually chose Bucknell because Dr. Payn was there and the bell choir. So he was one of my formative leaders in getting involved in college and in the music program. I have rung with Dr. Payn afterwards through festivals, and he's actually come back to Morristown once or twice to direct a reunion choir of his original ringers up through current. So he has really been a factor in my life.
I'll go first. I'm Ben Ramsayer. I rang with DP at Bucknell from 2006 to 2010, but much like Glenn, I'm not really sure when I first met DP, but it was probably when I was pretty young because I also, like Glenn, was part of the Presbyterian Church in Morristown. And when I met DP specifically in high school, that's what made me go to Bucknell, because I wanted to take the bell path that Glenn and others like him before me had taken. So, he's been influential in my decision making, and then I met a girl and had a baby. So, it's all paid off. It's been really good. I'll take the baby and Gabby, introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Gabby Ramsayer. I met DP my freshman year at Bucknell because I auditioned for the Rooke Chapel Choir, and that was in 2008, the fall. And I did not join the Rooke Chapel Ringers right away. There was a cute boy in the Ringers that I, liked at the time, and he called me up in my sophomore year and said, "Hey, I think you should join Rooke Chapel Ringers. You read bell music, or you read music." And I was like, "Yeah, I've subbed in my church choir a little bit, but oh man, I did not know what I was getting into when I joined Rooke Chapel Ringers, because that is it's no joke. It is hard." But I really, honestly, I left Bucknell, and looking back, Rooke Chapel Ringers was one of the best things that I could have done at Bucknell, a lot because of DP. I really owe everything to Dr. Payn. I owe my entire faith to Dr. Payn. So he brought it together, which, is the most important thing in my life. So I thank DP so much for all of that.
Much like Gabby and Ben and Kelly and Glenn, I feel like my whole life has been impacted by the fact that I know Dr. Payn. I came to Bucknell in 1997, and I actually did not ring that year. DP was on sabbatical, and so I actually didn't even know he existed. I didn't know he was a thing. I didn't know the Rooke Chapel Ringers were a big deal. All I knew was when I heard them in chapel that year, I was like, oh my gosh, I want to do that. And so the following year I auditioned, but when I went into audition, the person who conducted them the previous year wasn't there, and this guy was there. And I was like, oh, he looks a little intimidating. I don't know who this dude is, and it was a good thing that I didn't know, because if I knew who he was, I probably would have just walked out of the audition. But again, kind of the same thing. I mean, the Rooke Chapel Ringers were I hate to use the cliche, but life changing. It was just a fantastic experience, and I've been able to ring since then, not quite as consistently as I like, but I've been to festivals with Dr. Payn, and even got to play for him in a reprise in 2013 and 2014. So it's had a profound effect on my life, and I would not be where I am without this man and the choir that we all got to love.
So I'm Ann Barnard, and DP and I go back to 2006 when I auditioned for the Rooke Chapel Ringers. And it was definitely the best part of my college experience. And just like a couple of other folks, I found Bucknell through the handbell world, and really only applied because I found out that I had a handbell choir. But it was really so much more than I could have anticipated. After leaving Bucknell, I continued to play handbells in different choirs wherever I was at. So in medical school, I found a choir, the New England Ringers in Massachusetts, and then out here in Seattle, where I've settled, have been playing with the Bells of the Sound, and then I've tried to get to as many distinctly bronze with DP as possible. But looking back, I can really say that's been a common thread throughout my life, and I'm really grateful to have had that.
Well, first of all, I think you can all see why I loved teaching at Bucknell. These six former students are the reason why I could do what I did. They were so enthusiastic and so into it and connected right away. And they all know that for me, connection is a really important part of a handball organization, just because if you don't connect with each other, you can't make music. And so that's kind of been what I've tried to teach through the years with any ensemble, whether it's distinctly bronze or virtuoso or any of the area festivals that I've conducted, just trying to get people to think together and think musically and separate themselves from their own part and allow the music to take hold. And, then there are just so many experiences that come to mind when I hear them talk. It's amazing. The 32 years that I had at Bucknell, oh my gosh. From Glenn remembers when we were first touring back in the 80s, and we weren't going by bus or plane or any train or whatever. We rented these little vans and crammed ourselves into them. And I don't know how the parents of these students even allowed it, but they were driving.
You either rode with Dr. Payn or you rode with Seth driving, or Jim Painter.
Yeah.
And you hope for the best. That's all you could do.
Yeah. So, but then it flourished through the years, of course, and as the ensemble got bigger, as far as the number of bells that we were ringing, we couldn't do that any longer. So we did finally end up with a bus. But yeah, so many memories come flooding back, and I appreciate these students so much, and they don't realize what they gave me as well. I fed off of their enthusiasm and their energy, and that's why we could make the music that we did.
One thing that I always took away from, working with Dr. Payn is he wasn't one of those like tyrannical, musical virtuoso leaders who would like yell and scream to get everything perfectly right. I think the motivating factor for everybody was that you didn't want to disappoint him. Like if you disappointed DP, that was the worst feeling in the entire world. So I always admired that as just him as a leader, never mind of a musical ensemble, but just a leader of a group of people. He was able to inspire and motivate without, ruling with a really, strong fist. It was just like the love of the music and wanting to, like he said, have that musical connection. So I think that's what drove everybody and, really bonded everybody together.
There was just a lot of fun. You didn't really, you didn't get confused. I mean, there would be occasionally you got a little bit out of hand, or the thing that you were supposed to have written in your score, you hadn't enough. And, there was the arched eyebrow of why did you just do that wrong? But more often than not, it was corrective by excitement, not corrective by, something being wrong. It was, let's see if we can get that to be more right. And so you always felt like you left a rehearsal in a positive state of mind. I don't think I can't picture a time where it didn't uplift me. And I was a little heartbroken. I did ring a fifth year because I was in graduate school. That's the other thing people know about me is I stayed there for a long time. So I was there for 7 years, and I rang for my fifth year. And then I started to feel that somebody else should have that opportunity. I'm taking up a position that someone else should be having the chance to do. But I look back at it now and I really regret not staying in it for a few more years while I was there, because I just, I look back and I think I just would have loved to have more time. But then he put me on the other side of the stick at one point. So I had to be, I was quote unquote the assistant conductor, and then he'd go off gallivanting around the world and I'd be left with rehearsals to run. So with my own peers and friends, and you'd be like, well, you're going to do this. And they'd be like, well, maybe we will, and maybe we won't. And that's when you realize exactly the kind of control and the kind of relationship he had with everybody, because it was very hard to create that yourself.
I think all of the students realized that when I corrected them and said to them, you might want to play a G natural there instead of a G sharp, that I wasn't, I wasn't attacking them as a person, and I think, unfortunately that does happen in the musical world, where there's that insecurity that is felt between conductor and performers. So I never wanted to cross that line. I wanted the students to respect the music and to make sure that it was as musical and as beautiful as it could ever be. And by doing that, they allowed me to be able to make those corrections and honored that. So pretty neat.
It's I think one of the things you get from working with the big man is that he doesn't flinch from the challenge. He doesn't assume that with 500 ringers in a festival setting that you can't get musicality. He's always assuming that you can. He's assuming that he will, and he's assuming that everybody will get on board. And so it's not a question of like making some sort of adjusted expectation for that environment. It's just going to happen. And it's not happening by magic. It's happening by, I wouldn't say force of will, but a force of community that rises up around the music with him.
I don't ever feel that Dr. Payn demanded respect. I think he commanded it by what everyone wanted to do for him. And there was never a time where he would put something in front of us that he thought we weren't capable of. I mean, there would be some hard pieces, but he would put it in front of us and then follow it up by saying, I know you can do this, which is a lot different, like Kelly and Rob and everybody saying, well, you're wrong. You can't make this work. It was such an endearing and helpful style of leadership. And I took a lot from that.
I learned from DP the right balance, right? We all feared the disappointment of DP, but he was also always our friend. And I have a distinct memory my freshman year. I still had this dream of playing basketball and was playing a lot of basketball. And I broke my hand playing basketball. And I didn't tell him, and I hid it from him. And I showed up to rehearsal with a cast on. And I was kind of like, being bred to be the new big bell ringer. And that look of disappointment that I got will never leave me. And it wasn't because he was holding me. It was because I just disappointed someone that I respected and was my friend. And that was more effective than, any curse words he could have said at me. So, I haven't broken my hand since. So.
But he does still play basketball.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, I remember that when I was ringing, the the bell rehearsals were the things I looked forward to the most in the week.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it got me through my week. And once we were at rehearsal, I know that we worked so hard there, but it never felt like it. We were buoyed along by just the camaraderie of each other, of Dr. Payn, because he treated us with respect. But I remember that I would leave rehearsals just exhausted because we put so much into these rehearsals, mentally, physically. I don't think I've done so many push-ups at a rehearsal to get ready for it. But it was a wonderful time because it kept me going through some rough times.
And in those days, we were rehearsing fairly late at night, weren't we, Glenn?
We were like 8 o'clock to 10:30 or 11 sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
They were late, long rehearsals, but they were worth it. We never flinched from it.
Yeah, because in the beginning, the bell choir was not a part of the curriculum, so we had to fit a time for rehearsal into the students' lives, and most of them were doing other extracurricular things. And I remember a couple of years where we started rehearsal at 10 o'clock at night, but the students wanted to do it, and we were there from 10 to 11:30. And that's why I love these guys.
I was going to add one more thing. I think DP already mentioned, but just how important, that camaraderie and friendship piece is to an ensemble. And that's something that I think kind of peaked at Bucknell, and it has been a struggle to find ever since. But there's this magic that happens when you really love the people you're ringing with, that makes, just like everyone is saying, the rehearsals more fun, the concerts and tours just a blast, and makes everything more efficient too. We had shorter rehearsals than I've had for groups since, but we got so much more done because we just kind of clicked and there was that synergy there.
Yeah.
And I agree. Yeah. It was the best part of my week.
Kelly now is helping me. I went into this virtual thing, kicking and screaming. I was trained to work with people simultaneously. And when all of a sudden I've discovered that I had to be doing virtual events and what have you, I went into shock for a while until people started to convince me that I could do this. And Hillary knows, I'm just tech-wise, I'm not there. So I stressed out about this today for a while too. But Kelly Bruno has helped me through all of that. I have a community choral group that has done 3 virtual performances now, and Kelly has been the one has been our tech person who has put all of those together, and you can find those online too. So it's really, really cool. I remember Ben and Gabby. One of the neatest things that I observed with the two of them was when they got engaged, and we were on our tour, our final tour, and they, unbeknownst to anybody else, certainly me, they went back to the stage where we performed, and Ben asked Gabby to marry him there. So that was pretty special, that whole thing. And Gabby and Ben, I wrote a piece for Ben, and that piece, Passages, was commissioned by his parents. Transitions, I'm sorry. There it is.
Oh, yeah, nice. Got props and everything.
That's right.
That was commissioned by Ben's parents for his graduation. And I've used it many times in various festivals, and Distinctly Bronze, I think. And so these are all these special memories. Hillary lives an hour away from me, so I know I have. It's so great to have Hillary be this close. I've gotten to know her family, her two daughters. We get together as often as we can, especially now during this COVID thing. But still, Hillary is writing a book, and you all need to know this about bells. And so you'll be hearing more about it, I think, too. But it's so exciting, and she's a great writer. Her expertise, of course, is in nonprofits, and her first book just came out a year ago about nonprofit organizations, and has been very successful, and is helping Ruth and me in our new venture with Walnut Acres. There is a Walnut Acres Foundation, and Hillary's on the board, and she's really helping us through all of that. So all of these things, we make these connections, and now it just blossoms. Rob now is the conductor for the Rooke Chapel Ringers, and he's had his frustrations with all of the stuff that's been going on this last year, and he took over the program after Sam Robinson, who is also an alumnus, did a beautiful job with them. And so Rob is doing the same, just keeping the tradition going as best he can at this point. And I so trust what he does, that I know that he's not one to give up, and that he has had frustrations. But I rest easy knowing that they're in good hands. These students are in really good hands. And he's got a great program at Moravian. And I think you're all going to get a chance to hear some of his choir play. And then Anne, as let's put it this way, she's a fellow runner. And one of the tours that we took, we went to Greece, and we were able to go to the original track of the Olympics. And Anne said, "Okay, are you going to race me?" And we raced, and she won, of course, and she had flip-flops on. And I was wearing regular shoes, and she still won. But that's a memory that I will always have. And then just her dedication and willingness to be one, along with Hillary and Kelly, to organize that whole thing that we did in Michigan. And that was because we all felt that we could do it. And they brought this up. Okay, we're going to ask if we can play for a national seminar. And I said, what? And when are we going to rehearse? And they said, well, we'll rehearse a couple days before we play. And this is it. I trusted these students so much, and they said, we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. You get up in front of us and allow us to make music, and we'll organize it. And they did. So
he didn't trust us
Yeah.
that much. He really didn't believe we could do it. He was not banking. He was not banking on going to Michigan that July until we filled all of those spots, and then he was like, "Oh." He called me out. We got to do this. But Anne and Kelly and I were not having it. We were like, nope, we're doing it, period, end of story.